Assalamu alaikum. This podcast has been brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Help us spread the light of prophetic guidance to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Make a small donation at seekersguidance.org/donate. As little as $10 a month can help people find life-changing guidance.
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.
Is civil disobedience permissible in Islam?
So, is civil disobedience permissible in Islam? The first principle is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has called us to two overarching qualities, right, which is justice and excellence. Justice and inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Allah commands to justice and doing good. Excellence being going beyond the merely good. Right? That's the basis of what Allah seeks from His creation. And the basis of laws is that laws are there to preserve justice and good, and to prevent injustice and harm. That's the basis of laws. But human legislation is a human attempt at preservation of justice and preservation of good, and the prevention of their opposites. So given that that's the assumption regarding laws, the basis of laws is that they are to be obeyed. And the basis of laws is that they are to be obeyed. But the obedience to human legislation is because it's a means of fulfilling the higher principle, which is that as believers, as human beings, we are called to uphold justice and uphold good, and to prevent injustice and to prevent harm, right? So, given the assumption regarding laws is this is what the laws are trying to do, right? Any human legal system, this is at least the starting assumption regarding it. So, given that, a believer, the general moral principle with respect to obeying laws is that a believer is morally obligated to obey the law. But this is a general duty, not an absolute duty. It's a general duty, not an absolute duty, meaning that there may be exceptions. The exceptions to obeying the law is when the law is manifestly contrary to justice and good, but by objective standards, not by personal preference. Meaning that the basis of determining what is justice, what is in the public interest, is assigned to those who are responsible for ensuring the public good, right? Those who are in authority, whether the judiciary or those in political authority. The basis is that it is their responsibility to uphold justice and good, right? The legal and political authority in a land, right? So you can't just say, I don't think this law is just, and then disobey it on the basis of your subjective principles or subjective principles. Because if you do so, there would be chaos, even if it's to your disadvantage, in that it is not an act of civil disobedience to run the traffic light, right? Saying that this is unjust because I'm going to lose, you're late for a job interview. Can you skip all the traffic lights? No. Said, well, I have a right to get a job. No. Right? That is a subjective pursuit of justice or good, etc. Rather, what is considered is when that if one stepped away from the situation, right? Any fair-minded person, right, where there's a degree of objectivity would say that this is an unjust law. This is a law that is contrary to the public good. Right? An example would be where it goes against the enshrined principles of a country. Right? A country says we believe in justice and freedom and the pursuit of this and equality, etc. And this is evidently contrary to that. But in that, one would need to consult about two matters before civil disobedience would be sound. Firstly, one has to ensure that this is in fact an unjust law, that this is in fact harmful, right? And secondly, what would be the right way of opposing that law, right? Because civil disobedience would be an exception to, right, the norm. And the principle with exceptions is that exceptions are kept exceptional, right? Because otherwise you have chaos. But there may be, upon due consultation, that this will be the most effective manner of opposing a particular legislation that is unjust or harmful, right? Then this is the first consideration, right? That is it in fact unjust or harmful? Number two, is this the right way to pursue redress? The third consideration that is very important is that one must consider likely consequences, right? That one must consider likely consequences. That the likely consequences would be reasonably expected to be of greater benefit than harm. Right? So that if, for example, if one is in a country where there's a particularly oppressive government, such that if one rises up in civil disobedience against them, then reasonably, right, you would expect that they would crack down even more brutally. Right? So instead of there being a limited harm taking place, there'll be a generalized harm, or there'll be a greater denial of rights. So it requires consideration, particularly in those kinds of oppressive contexts of how one redresses. So civil disobedience is permitted when something is objectively unjust or harmful. Some law is unjust and harmful, and that this would be the effective way of redressing it. And one has considered, through due consideration, that the way this civil disobedience takes place will not result in greater harm than good. So it requires due consideration and consultation. And for a Muslim, it is very important in such matters for activists, whether they be social activists or political activists, to be in active consultation with people of knowledge, right? So they they consult with other people of political or social activist experience, but that what is likely to be effective, but also to be guided by the principles of our religious and legal tradition in terms of what is permitted and what is not permitted, right? So that our protest is ethically and morally properly rooted, and that our intentions in that pursuit are sound.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Seeker's Guidance, the Global Islamic Seminary. Visit seekersguidance.org to access reliable Islamic knowledge taught by qualified teachers. We offer a wide range of courses, podcasts, articles, and a world-class answer service. Support us in spreading free, reliable Islamic knowledge to millions around the world by becoming a monthly supporter. Visit seekersguidance.org/donate and make a small monthly commitment today. Our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Whoever guides someone to goodness will have a similar reward." So don't forget to share this podcast and spread prophetic guidance.